right, well, I'm going to hand over to Dana now, who is going to get us going on the masterclass. If you have questions, just add them in the chat. I will take note of them. If there's a natural pause, then we might ask some questions during the session. Otherwise, I will hold those questions until the end of the masterclass. Thanks, Dana.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. And hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are and which part of the world. Thank you so much for joining. And we apologize again for what happened last week. It was out of our hands. Zoom decided not to work internationally. And thank you for joining us today. As Rachel said, today we're going to have our session about teaching social emotional learning conceptually for lifelong learning. But before we do that, let's just go through some masterclass housekeeping tips. Please do not take screenshots or recordings of this session. Only take notes or recordings for personal use. And this is a Zoom meeting, so we request that you switch on your video, but please keep yourselves on mute unless you're asked to unmute and share. A masterclass replay video will be made available within a few days, and it will remain online for you to watch for 7 days after it's uploaded. We'll email you when it's available to watch. Please share your experiences, insights, and learning on social media and use hashtag PLI Masterclass and tag us in your posts. In today's session, we're going to be talking about sustainability of learning, what really makes learning sustainable, the what, why, and how about social emotional learning. And I'm going to be sharing with you a sample social emotional learning lesson plan and how we implemented it in school. And last but not least, we're going to try out together to apply teaching social emotional learning conceptually in our contexts. I'm very excited for today's session. I hope you are as well. A little bit about me. I shared a few pictures here. As you can see, the one to the right is with Rachel, and that was from the first concept-based inquiry learning lab conference in The Hague in 2023. And to the left side, this is me presenting in that conference. It was an amazing experience. Who am I? Definitely, I'm an educator at heart. I love education and I have passion for teaching and learning. And I believe that through education, we can actually have a better world, one child at a time. I definitely started my journey as a teacher. I taught in an IB school as a PYP teacher for grades 4 and 5. And then I was a PYP coordinator and a university instructor. And currently, I'm the director of academics. I'm also an IBIN member. I work as an IBIN member, the IB Education Network, as an evaluation leader, program leader, and a workshop leader. And very interestingly and most importantly, I'm an Erickson and Lanning certified concept-based inquiry curriculum and instruction trainer. And that was a wonderful experience that I had 2 years ago. I went through the certification process for a whole year and it was life-changing. I always had different questions. I had those gaps that this certification filled out for me about teaching and learning. And it was a great process that changed the way I perceived teaching and learning. And it definitely impacted my career and everyone I worked with. And I'm so passionate about it. I'm also a global schools advocate for the UN SDGs and an ADLX, which is Active Deep Learner Experience Facilitator. And again, I'm so excited to be with you today. As you can see on the right side, we also have these amazing books. And some of the strategies I use today are from the Green Book. I call it the Green Book, the Concept-Based Inquiry in Action book. It is amazing. It has wonderful strategies, especially for the teachers who are looking for ready strategies and steps to implement in your classrooms. That is your book. Okay. Now we're starting with our session. As a teacher, I always saw in my students' faces this question. They never asked it, but I always felt it. When they look at me at the beginning of the session, they think and they say, to learn or not to learn? That is the question. Depending on the content I'm giving, depending on what I prepare for them, depending if I'm going to really trigger their curiosity and their thinking, they decide whether they want to learn in that session or not. But the real question is, what makes learning memorable, transferable, meaningful, and sustainable? All of us as teachers, we know that sometimes we do teach and we use great strategies and active learning strategies, and we are so prepared. But sometimes we end up having students who don't remember anything from our sessions. Or sometimes we even finish the whole year and they go into another grade level, and the other teacher would say, they learned nothing last year. I'm teaching them all over again the concepts that they should have learned before. Well, why is that happening? Why is learning being lost? And what should we really do to make sure that students are transferring their learning outside the context of their classroom? And my question here is not only about subjects. It's not only about math, English, science, PE, art. It's just more than that. What kind of depth can we go into in our teaching that really makes our teaching sustainable and that really helps our students to become lifelong learners and would help them outside the classroom? It would help them in their real life. It will help them when they graduate from school. How are we really preparing them for real life? That's why I chose to speak about social emotional learning and not any other subject. Of course, all subjects are so important, but social emotional learning is as important. And as educators, we really need to pay attention to that. By saying this, I don't mean that we don't teach it. I'm sure that within today's session and by the end of the session, you would all say, okay, yeah, I do teach social emotional learning. Definitely, as passionate teachers, we always embed a bit of concepts and skills for social emotional learning. But today, I just want to bring your attention more into social emotional learning and how can we really teach it conceptually and make sure that our students are applying what they're learning in real life. I'm sharing a definition of SEL. Definitely, there are a lot of other definitions, but this is from Castles. They say that SEL, social emotional learning, is the process through which children and adults, so it's not only children and adults, acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain relationships, and make responsible decisions. These are big words, and honestly, these are as important as anything else we're teaching. Because let's face it, I know, and I'm sure you do as well, a lot of A students that were with us in school that were really good maybe in math and science, and they excelled in that subject. But in real life, they weren't able to excel in many other aspects. They didn't have the skill set, they didn't have the social, emotional, self awareness, responsible decision making, social awareness that they needed. And they struggled in life to acquire it by themselves. But why not prepare them for that in school so that they become ready? They would be excelling in their subjects and in their area of strength and would have social emotional learning as well to accompany them for a successful life, for a lifelong learning journey. I'm sharing also here the Castle wheel that has the SEL competencies. In case you're not familiar with them, we have 5 competencies, as you can see here in the middle. Self-awareness. How can we make our students aware about themselves, their strengths, their development points, their skills? How can they be aware about their emotions? What makes them happy? What makes them sad? How can we teach them self-management, to manage themselves, their time, to motivate themselves, to have this intrinsic motivation? How can we teach them to be responsible for the decisions they make, to have healthy relationships, and to be socially aware? These are skills, but also teaching those skills just as skills and not taking it a level further conceptually will not guarantee actually that our students are going to apply them outside school context. And this is what we're going to be working on together today. Now, I'm going to start with this strategy. And as I mentioned, it's in the Green Book. This strategy is the four-corner debate. It's very interesting. Students love it, especially if we're not doing it online. If you're doing it in class, you would have posters around the classroom, around the corners of your class saying, strongly agree, agree, strongly disagree, and disagree. And then you can just display some statements about whatever you're teaching. Now, of course, my statements, my three statements, and this is the first, are all related to SEL, to social emotional learning. But what I want you to do, please, is to decide whether you agree, strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with the statements I'm sharing. Remember, this is a safe environment, so there is no right or wrong answer. Just feel free to choose whatever you feel is right. So, do you agree, disagree, strongly disagree with all teachers are SEL teachers, regardless of their subject? I will not share my opinion now because, as I told you, it is debatable. I can see that many of you agree and strongly agree. Amazing. Great. Ready to move to our next statement? Veronica, that's creative. She said SA, so strongly agree. So, okay, Nyla says she disagrees. Great. We will discuss this further. And many of you either agree or strongly agree. Now we're moving to our second statement. Again, do you agree, strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree that students can't learn effectively if their social emotional needs aren't being met? Kinda, hello Kinda. She said strongly agree. Many of you strongly agree. We have Shay disagrees. Strongly agree, agree. Hello Zainab. Agree. Okay, great. Now, our third and last statement for this strategy, for the four corners debate. Do you agree, strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree that linking social emotional learning to academics makes learning more meaningful? So many of you, the answers vary between agree and strongly agree. Margaret said, ask me at the end of the webinar. I will. And we have certainly strongly agree from Budur. All right. These were the three statements. As I told you, I will not share whether it's right or wrong because it is debatable. But I would like you to debate the following. So let's debate. This is a statement, and I would like you to state your opinion in the chat about it. SEL can be taught as a separate subject in schools. What do you think? Naila says yes, indeed. Marwa says definitely. Budur says I disagree. Margaret says, of course, but shouldn't it be integrated? Okay, we're going to be talking about this, Margaret. Afaf says, I disagree. Hello, Afaf. Ola Bukola, I hope I pronounced it correct. It should be inclusive. Lisa says, difficult as it can be embedded in behavior. Interesting. I think it should be embedded in learning. Yes, but most effective when blended in regular lessons. It should be integrated, maybe inclusive. it should be integrated instead of teaching it as a separate subject. I really like how we have varied answers. As you can see, like for this statement, you had like two different ends. Some of you say, yes, it can be as an SEL subject, but most of you are saying it could be integrated. Great, amazing. I will not say my opinion now because, as I said, there is no right or wrong answer, but I will be talking about this in a few minutes. I can see that some of you are still responding, which is great. Now, I spoke about what is SEL, why SEL, and now I'm going to delve deeper. Why did I actually talk about social emotional learning? Well, because social emotional learning is really essential for well-being and for our mental health, not only as students, but also as adults. And we all know that students and adults are struggling with a lot of issues regarding mental health. And we really need to just talk about it as educators and see what we can do. Because as I said, we are all change makers and we can really make a change in our students' life if in case we decided to be focusing on social emotional learning. So what does it do? Studies say that it enhances resilience, which is something we really need because, as you know, life doesn't go without challenges. We all have challenges and setbacks, but are we really teaching our students to be resilient? And it also enhances stress management. And let's face it, we all have stressful lives, don't we? So it really helps with stress management. It improves academic performance. So studies really correlate good mental health with academic performance. As we have mentioned before, one of the statements were, do you think that students who don't have their social emotional learning needs met, can they really learn? No, it definitely affects that. And those who have them met, they will learn better. It builds lifelong coping and interpersonal skills, which are definitely transferable skills to real life. And it supports mental health at all ages. And when we speak about all ages, it means from KG to grade 12 and afterwards as well as adults. So we finished the what, this is the how. But why? Now, sorry, we finished the what, this is the why. And now we're going to talk about the how. I'm sharing with you here a resource as educators that we can use. It's a wonderful resource that I actually used with our wonderful counselor to prepare for the lesson plan that I'm going to be talking about in a bit. This is a resource from the World Health Organization because they totally believe in mental health and the importance of shedding light on this issue for educators. So they created this manual and it's available online. And what's really interesting about it is that they mentioned the milestone for each age group. And we're speaking about KG until grade 12. Here, there's a screenshot as an example. They gave you here the ages 6 to 8-year-olds, and they explained their milestone. So students at this age usually are growing independent. They have common fears like problems in their family, failure, rejection, and the list goes on. And as you can see at the right, they suggested some strategies to promote healthy development, like what can the teachers do for this milestone specifically? So give lots of positive attention, let children help define the rules, and so on. And as you can see at the bottom, they speak about ages 9 to 12-year-old students. And for example, in this age group, all they really care about is to win, lead, or be first or valued. So these are also descriptions of this milestone. For the lesson plan that I'm going to talk about, we used this resource and we chose difficulty dealing with failure. And we applied it to grade 5 students. And I'm going to be talking more about it. Another resource for those of you who are IB teachers, definitely you know that in the PYP, we have a subject called PSPE, which is Personal Social Physical Education. And here you can find part of the competencies of the social emotional learning are already in the scope and sequence. So as you can see here in the screenshot, they speak about identity as one of the strands and interaction. And luckily, you have the conceptual understandings, which will definitely help you in planning your session conceptually. So, for example, and it's divided into phases, which are also milestones, age milestones. So, for example, in the first phase, you see that each person is an individual, emotions, attitudes, and beliefs influence the way we act. So, these are all conceptual understandings that are really important to teach. Also, of course, there are other resources on the ibo.org for MYP and for TP about social emotional learning. So again, I shared two resources, but definitely there are much more resources out there. And I'm sure like different schools use different resources for social emotional learning, and many of them already embedded in the form of skills or approaches to learning.
Maybe if you have any favorite resources, as Dana's presenting this next slide, if you've got any favorite resources that relate, just drop them in the chat so that others can also check them out.
That would be great. Okay, so now you can see on the screen that there are some concepts. I want you to take a few seconds to read those concepts and think, do you teach these concepts or not? So the concepts, empathy, identity, frustration, perspective, independence, responsibility. I'm sure as teachers, we always embed social emotional learning. Sometimes we're not aware that we're doing this, but like if the students are like, let's say, fighting in the recess, they come back to your class, you're going to be talking about certain SEL concepts. If you see someone frustrating before an exam or for any reason, you're going to take a couple of minutes and talk about frustration. You're going to talk about empathy, responsibility, tolerance. So these are all concepts that we usually we use on a daily basis as teachers. But now let's see how we can use these concepts to think about teaching SEL conceptually. So here, I'm going to talk about a very important aspect of concept-based teaching when we teach conceptually, which is the inductive teaching. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. I'm going to start with the example at the bottom, okay, here, which is the traditional way of teaching. When the teacher goes into the classroom and tells the students what we're going to learn about and what you want them to understand, the teacher provides a generalization to examine. So, for example, if you want to talk about dealing with failure and you just go into the classroom and say, okay, dealing with failure will help you in enhancing your resilience. You just went there and you told them what they need to understand. And then you gave them examples and videos and articles to read. And then by the end of the session, they're going to say, yes, I agree with you. They will validate the generalization. The session might be very interesting. It might be very engaging, especially if there's a passionate teacher talking about it and you got really good factual examples. However, the question is, will learning be transferred? Are the students really responsible for their learning? Were they really able to come up with this generalization by their own, or was it just provided for them? That is the deductive approach. That is the traditional way of teaching. Now, think about the other scenario. You go into the classroom, you trigger students' interest about what you're going to be teaching them through a video, through a discussion, and then you provide them with a lot of examples. For example, a video about the concept of failure, for example, an article about it, some case studies about it, and then you ask them questions, factual and conceptual questions that will help them make links and look for patterns between these examples. And then you will ask them another question a conceptual one. And this is where they're going to come up with their own understanding. When you ask them, what did you understand? For example, and why is dealing with failure important? And then each one of your students, if you have 20 students in your class, you're going to have 20 different answers. And this is exactly what they understood from your session. It's not what you provided them with. They were responsible for their own learning. And when people are responsible for their own learning, when they actually reached that understanding, they will apply it. They will remember it. And they will apply it not only inside the classroom, but outside the classroom as well. And that is all the difference between teaching in a deductive way and teaching conceptually in an inductive approach. I hope this is helpful. Now, I'm going to be talking about the lesson that I collaborated with our wonderful counselor in the school to teach grade 5 students. We wanted to teach them about dealing with failure because we felt that this is a very important concept for grade 5 students who are 10 to 11-year-olds. And as I mentioned, we used the WHO resource, and we found out that this is a description of their milestone at this age. What was the understanding? Remember, we're doing the first one, the inductive approach. So as teachers, before we went into the classroom, we really planned it very well. And we had the understanding, but we didn't say it to our students. We wanted them to understand that dealing with failure shapes one's personality through developing resilience. As you can see, resilience is an SEL concept, failure, personality as well. So these are SEL concepts that we had in mind and we wanted to teach to our students. And this is an example of teaching SEL explicitly. This is the resource we used, the one I mentioned before. And as you can see here at the bottom, in 9 to 12-year-olds, difficulty dealing with failure is one of the descriptions of their milestone. And this is our wonderful counselor, our wonderful students at Ru'ya School. They were implementing the session. So let me walk you through the steps and the actual lesson plan of how we taught this session. But before I do that, I would like to mention that we are lucky in the school to have the counselor teaching mental health and well-being sessions because we believe in the importance of mental health and well-being, and we dedicated a session and the counselor to be doing that, and it was very effective. I'm not saying this is the only way. I'm going to be sharing the other way as well, but now I'm going to walk you through the session when we actually taught SEL explicitly and conceptually to our students. So again, this is the conceptual understanding. This is what we wanted our students to understand. Dealing with failure shapes one's personality through developing resilience. As you can see on the right, you can find the inquiry cycle that is developed by the CBI, by Rachel and Marshall. So here you can find that we start with how to engage the students, focus, investigate, organize, generalize, and transfer. In this section here in this slide, I'm going to show you how we engage the students. We went into the class and we showed them a video, something not related, the video of an eagle. I don't know if you know, but the eagles go through a very difficult decision during their life. At the age of 40, they lose their feathers, they can't fly very well, and their beak is dysfunctional. And they go through a decision that they have to take. They either have to fly to the top mountain and stay in the nest and start plucking their feathers and breaking their beaks so that a new feathers will grow and a new beak will grow. And then they would live up to 70 years, or they're just going to give up at the age of 40. We showed this video to the students and they were so amazed by it. They didn't know this. Although it's something not like directly linked, but we linked it to failure. And we asked them and we had a discussion about the eagle's decision and how is it connected to human experiences of failure. And we asked them, what do you think of the eagle's story and why is it important to us? And that sparked their curiosity and they really wanted to know more about the session. Here, in the focus part of our inquiry cycle, we wanted to define together what is failure, right? Because this is the concept we're talking about, and this is part of their milestone in grade 5. Students had different definitions. Each one individually had their own definition, and then they shared their definition as a group. And then we showed them a definition as well, and we agreed on a collective one. And we wrote that on the board. And we told them that today we're exploring how failure can actually help us grow. And this is the most interesting part. And this here in the investigate, now they're ready. Now they're interested. Now we sparked that curiosity. Remember the question to learn or not to learn? They were all deciding to learn at this point. They were excited to know more. What are we going to talk about? And here we had a cross-comparison chart. And this is another strategy from the Green Book, where we provided them with case studies and case studies that are very interesting, especially for this age group of students. The first one was about J.K. Rowling. Those of you who don't know J.K. Rowling, she's the author of Harry Potter. And we told them, do you know her story and what she's been through? And like many of them had no idea. But if you don't know, J.K. Rowling went through a lot of rejections, 12 rejections to be precise, and none of the publishers were willing to publish her book until the 13th publisher gave that book to her daughter, and her daughter read Harry Potter throughout the night. And this is where the publisher said, I will publish Harry Potter. So she got through a lot of rejection. We also told them the case study of Steve Jobs. They read the case study and they saw that Steve Jobs, he's the owner of Apple. He founded Apple and he was fired from his own company. And what did he do when he was fired? He actually created another company, Pixar, which is very known to all of us. And then he returned back to his company to transform it. As the students were really delving into those very interesting case studies for them, we asked them 2 questions for each. For J.K. Rowling, we asked them, what were the setbacks that she faced? Also for Steve Jobs, what were the setbacks? And they explained, because we had a detailed case study. So J.K. Rowling went through a lot of struggles, Steve Jobs as well. And then we asked them the question, how did J.K. Rowling respond to failure? And what about Steve Jobs? And they answered on the cross-comparison chart. Then we wanted to personalize it a little bit because, the concept of failure could be different from one age group to another. We're talking about J.K. Rowling and Steve Jobs, but let's remember, again, this is grade 5, dealing with grade 10 to 11-year-olds. Their concept for failure is different. We asked them, when did you fail? When was the last time you failed? Some of them said it was in sports. They tried to learn tennis. They couldn't. Paddle. They couldn't. Some of them said in exams. Different answers that were contextualized and personalized for our students. And then we asked, how did you respond? So you actually faced failure, but how did you respond? Did you give up? Did you try? Some of them, yes, they said, yeah, I just gave up on the sport. Some of them said, yes, I started to hate that subject. I kept on failing it. And some of them said, no, I didn't give up. I tried, and so on. And after we finished the cross-comparison chart, we reached this part. We told them, okay, throughout the session, we spoke about different concepts, different things. Let's create a word bank and tell me what you remember. Just pop up. Say the words you remember from the beginning of the session till now. And they started giving us all those concepts. And these are some of the examples that the student actually gave from the session. Resilience, perseverance, growth, mindset, success, learning, setbacks, challenges. As you can see, some of them are concepts from the questions we asked, but many of them were from the discussions they had. We created our concept bank, and that is how we are organizing their thinking. And then we asked them a conceptual question. We told them, okay, we saw the story of the eagle. We defined what is failure. We saw what happened with J.K. Rowling and Steve Jobs and your own experiences with failure. Now, in what ways can failure lead to growth? And each student had her own paper to answer this question in her own way, using the concept bank, this one, that we created, or any other concepts that they can think about. And they came up with amazing and powerful generalizations, knowing that it was the first time we teach them conceptually. As you can see here, they were sharing their generalizations together. And we told them, what you wrote on those cardboards, small cardboards, are going to be your quotes. And we're going to display them in the classroom for you to always look back at them whenever you face a difficulty, a setback in an exam, in the PYP exhibition, because they're going through the PYP exhibition experience. And you know how they really need the skills and the SEL during that journey. And they really referred back to those quotes, and that was very helpful. Well, we ended the session with another discussion. How did you feel about this session? How can you actually apply what you have learned in real life? In which context can you apply it? And they learned that failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of it. And they understand that failure shapes who we are by helping us grow stronger and more resilient. And now, as I said, they're just using those generalizations in different contexts. That was the session we gave. Again, this is one way of teaching SEL, and that was the explicit way, when we can teach it as a separate subject, when we are really aware of their milestone and what needs to be taught to this age group. But is it the only way? Definitely not. Back to the debatable question we had. Some of you said that it can be taught explicitly and as a separate subject or a separate session. And some of you, and actually many of you, said it should be integrated. And I agree with you. Most of the teachers, most of the classes, most of the schools, we do not actually have a separate session to teach SEL. However, we as teachers can definitely integrate SEL into our units, into our subjects, regardless of what subjects we teach, being math, English, science, anything we're teaching. We can just give it this dimension, this extra dimension I know that we do it as teachers, but let's plan it to make sure that the learning would be sustainable. And let's make sure that we're teaching it conceptually. I'm going to give you an example of how we integrated the same understanding to a unit. So this is a unit about inventions and innovation. And you know that this unit, really, we can just integrate dealing with failure into this unit. So inventions and innovation reflect individuals' creativity and knowledge, leading to the development of tools and technologies that shape the future. Let's suppose that this is the unit that we want to teach about inventions and innovation. We can easily have a parallel understanding that we want our students to reach. For example, the same conceptual understanding that I talked about. Throughout our inquiry into inventions and the inventors that we're going to talk about, I want them to be looking also at the aspect of dealing with setbacks, challenges. Like this inventor, what did he go through to reach the end, the invention we all know about? Was it an easy road? Was it an easy journey? Or did he go through a lot of challenges, and how did he overcome them? This is exactly what we can do to integrate this conceptual understanding throughout our units. If we're teaching a unit for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, depending on your context, depending on your curriculum, or if like this is a general unit, most probably to a PYP school, but also as a subject, even if you're teaching math, art, music, and we're going to see some examples in a bit, you can always have a parallel understanding that you can teach conceptually to the students, just like the example we have seen together. And keep on reminding the students about it, keep on validating the understanding they reached into the different case studies and the different examples and facts and knowledge that you're going to be giving throughout your unit. Now it's your turn. I want you to choose an SEL concept. I will show you the concepts again. And think of a unit or a lesson that you usually teach or a lesson that you taught. What is the enduring understanding you want your students to develop from this session? Okay, so think about your subjects and in the chat, just tell us, for example, math, I teach fractions or decimals or whatever. And then this is the SEL concept that I would like to integrate. And this is the understanding. This is what I want my students to understand from this unit or subject. Here are the concepts. So choose one of these concepts with your subject and tell us, what do you want your students to understand? After we do this exercise together, I will also give you some examples, but I would like you to try this. Oh, I just saw some of the comments. Thank you, Budur. She's saying the best session I have ever attended. I is saying that's very impressive and so IB related. I'll get the chance to read the comments later, hopefully. So just tell us, what is a concept, an SEL concept that you feel can easily be integrated with your subject? Just mention the subject, the concept, and tell us what you want your students to understand. I'll start reading your amazing answers. So Fatima saying persistence in math. Yes, they need it. We know that many students don't like math and they need to be very persistent to reach the answer at the end. Budur saying empathy and responsibility. Resilience in the unit of migration. Amazing. Conflict in a literacy lesson through a read aloud. Wonderful. Independence in math. Thank you. Responsibility when integrating SDGs in PYP exhibition or action per unit in general. Thank you, Ghada. Amazing. History, conflict, and I'll bring the aspect of empathy. Wonderful. Identity in the unit of civilization. Independence in science. Responsibility and respect when introducing young learners to using musical instruments. Definitely. Being responsible about the instruments, not to break them, and to respect. Wonderful. Agency in writing. I think I missed some of the answers at the beginning. Frustration in math. Yes. Frustration in phonics, reading, and writing. In biology, we teach family planning and contraceptive methods. The SEL concepts could be responsibility and respect. Wonderful. Shumaila, hello Shumaila. I would like to teach the concept of responsibility in the unit sources of wealth. Wonderful. Kinda, independence in writing a narrative letter. Identity in math, place value. Interesting combination. And wonderful answers. Thank you, everyone. Now, I'm going to show you some understanding. So you all mentioned wonderful links between the concepts, the SEL concepts, and the lessons that you usually teach and the subject that you usually teach. Now I'm going to show you how you can just phrase it into an understanding that you can have in the back of your mind as a teacher. And as we mentioned, you teach it inductively to the students and let them reach this understanding throughout your session and have it as a parallel understanding to your unit or the subject. So here we gave some examples for math, art, music, science, language, and social studies. I hope I covered the subjects of the teachers we have in today's session. In math, for example, you can teach them understanding mistakes helps people grow. Because let's face it, we all do mistakes in math, right? And you want them to reach this understanding that, okay, it's okay to have mistakes, and mistakes will help me grow, will help me learn. And if you just dedicate a session or just have it implicitly teaching this understanding to your students will really help them and will build resilience and will build independence, because I saw some of you were asking for resilience and independence and persistence in math. So giving a little bit of time to teach this social emotional learning concepts conceptually will save you a lot of time, actually, because when they see the importance, when they see, okay, if I do mistakes, that will help me learn, they're going to be more excited to actually learn math. Art, expressing emotions through different mediums deepens self-awareness. So this is very deep, and this is like really they will learn, okay, it's really important to do that. And if I learn this here in my art class, I can actually apply it later on in my real life. Music, for example, collaboration and ensemble work builds empathy and relationship skills. That is interesting. And it focuses here, as you can see, on the concept of collaboration, relationship skills, and empathy in music. Science, ethical choices in science relate to responsibility and decision making, especially in science. And you know that sometimes we do teach a lot of topics that are controversial, and we need to be teaching our students how to deal with them ethically and how to have ethical choices when it comes to science. Language. I saw many of you gave examples of narrative. Here you can, for example, teach stories, develop perspective taking and social awareness. Because as you can see, like in stories, when you deal with different perspectives and you have, the different activities of what do you think of the main character, what do you think of the other characters, we teach a lot of perspective. And this is something that you can actually encourage your students to apply in real life, like the different stories they hear about from their friends, to learn how they can have different perspectives, how to accept others, how to reflect on the stories they hear from others, and to have tolerance. And last but not least, social studies. Historical conflicts show how identity and misunderstanding lead to breakdown in relationships. And for example, if you're teaching about historic conflicts, World War I, World War II, and many students are not going to be interested to learn about this. However, if you give it this context of like, okay, let's learn from the mistakes. Let's learn how historical conflicts show how identity and misunderstanding lead to breakdown in relationships. You just gave it a universal aspect, an aspect that is not limited to time and place, and like an understanding that they can really apply in real life and they can really make sense of. And we're talking about these understandings that will be parallel to your sessions. Like, for example, if you're doing this math unit about any unit, for example, that would take 6 weeks, you're just going to be making sure that they understand this conceptual understanding and they reach it. And this will really help you. Similarly, in art, music, science, and any other subjects. Now that I gave you some understanding, some examples, I want you to share with me and to reflect which one fits with your unit. Which one did you really like from those examples that I have shared? And do you feel they are relevant, they are applicable, or you can apply them? Yasmin is saying great concepts, thanks. Veronica, this link can be the one about the eagle story. Oh, thank you, Veronica. Naila saying, all amazing, all are quite authentic. I'm glad you liked them, Naila, and I'm glad you found that they're authentic. Wonderful. Amazing. Now I would like you to share with me one idea that you can implement in your school about teaching SEL conceptually. So from all our session, we spoke about how we can teach it explicitly through a separate session. We thought about how we can integrate it into any context, into any subject we're teaching. What is one idea or one takeaway from today's session that you can apply in your classes easily in your school? So, parallel understanding. Thank you. I really like that. You like this phrase. Both explicitly and implicitly, loved both. Amazing. I feel that it's very inspiring to get case studies related to the SEL concepts. I agree with you, Veronica, especially if you choose case studies that are interesting to your grade level and to your students because you know their interests. And that would just make a big difference. Incorporate SEK in different units. Amazing. I feel there's a lot of integration with science. I agree. Love the explicit teaching conceptually. Wonderful. Sticking to every step of the conceptual cycle, starting from engage to transfer. Great. I agree with you. It's such a good inquiry cycle. I train teachers thinking how to incorporate SEL among teachers, adults. Amazing. I love that you took it into this context. Definitely, as leaders as well, we need to be teaching SEL, persistence, perseverance, resilience, also to adults. Amazing. I think it's very important to incorporate these concepts with the ATLs. Excellent. Definitely. Of, many of the ATL, the approaches to learning, the skills, they are already integrated with SEL. But let's take it into another level and teach them conceptually. I will apply the inductive approach in my teaching. It will be a game changer in my lessons. I guarantee it will. Definitely it will. Both methods can be applied integrated for low level learners. I agree. Marwa saying teaching it conceptually. I also think it's very convenient to integrate SEL in other units, especially in social studies and PSHE. Definitely. In physical education, you can easily talk about sportsmanship, collaboration, lots of SEL concepts that we can integrate and that are very important. Ghada is saying we teach SEL as individual sessions. Great. But I can start now having other teachers implement it as well implicitly without our unit through concepts. Amazing. Thank you, Ghada. That would be wonderful. Someone said, I want to use the eagle idea as a provocation in a staff meeting. Yes, it is amazing. I did that before and it's so inspiring. Veronica agreed as well. She says, excellent idea. I love the idea about teaching these explicitly and think that this could be taught in a high school setting during form times and see the same concepts being reinforced within their subjects. I love the case studies to help this. I agree. The case studies are a game changer. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing these amazing ideas. And I would like to end our session with a little bit of tips. So we spoke about social emotional learning, and I'm sure that all of you in your schools, you have experts, counselors, social workers, experts in SEL. Why not refer to those experts the next time you're planning your unit, just like I did? And I would like to thank Fatima for the amazing collaboration we did together and the planning we did together to make this lesson and the session a success to our students. The second tip, use SEL resources the next time you plan your unit. That just like the examples we have given, the World Health Organization one, you can just Google it and you'll just find the manual. Or if you are teaching in an IB context, you can use the PSPE. And the last tip, add one SEL understanding to your unit, a parallel understanding, and it will make all the difference. And it will make your learning memorable, sustainable, and transferable. And it will really help your students be engaged into your session. And that will really make a big difference in our students. Just imagine, like each teacher, each subject doing that all over the years from KG to grade 12, we will definitely have a better mental health well-being in our students, and they're going to be much more resilient and ready for real life. They're going to be lifelong learners. Thank you, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed the session, and definitely we have time for all your questions.
All right. One of the great things that I love about what Dana was sharing today is this idea of planning with the counsellor. And that is a really important way to be able to draw on the skills of the counsellor. Counsellors will often be able to provide resources like the ones that Dana has shared today. But I think there's also another benefit of that we sometimes don't lean into or recognise. Sometimes a counsellor is someone who works in the school that very few students really know or have a connection with. And it's only those students who either from the parents or the teachers have encouraged or made a decision to send to the counsellor who build this connection. By bringing the counsellor into the classroom lessons, they become someone who is known and trusted by the students, someone that they have a connection to, someone that they know the role of in a really authentic way, so that they're more likely to actually reach out themselves or to go and see the counsellor if there's something that they want to talk about. So the idea of actually planning and having the counsellor in lessons with students to be facilitating some of this work and co-teaching alongside the teachers, I think is such an important one. There's a few questions in the chat about, will we share the recording? Yes, we absolutely will share the recording. So don't worry, that will get sent out to you in the next few days. It just takes a little while for our team to download it and trim it and get it out there, but we will definitely be doing that. So building relationships with the school counsellor is a really valuable part of that. And also thinking about that opportunity for both integrated and standalone units. And I don't think it should ever be one or the other in any area. So for social emotional learning, but for literacy, for maths, for science, there are times when we can do things that are intentionally more standalone because there's a specific skill or concept that we see students need to work on, and other times when we can fully integrate it into the unit. And so we need to make intentional choices about that. There might be a particular social emotional skill that we see our particular cohort of students really need, but that doesn't naturally integrate well with the unit that we're teaching. And so, as Dana mentioned, sometimes that's something that we tend to just sort of add in as we go through and try and address at the end of lunchtime when there's been a disagreement or something. But the advantage of what Dana has shared with us today is that we're not just addressing it in the heat of the emotions of the student. By drawing other case studies from videos, from books, from real life people, that's a little bit more removed from the emotions of what the child has just experienced, it allows them to step back and think about strategies and build understandings that, as Dana said, they can then have them as quotes on the wall that they own, that when that emotional eruption happens during lunchtime or even during class time through conflict, they can then go back to it and say, yeah, I do remember. I remember that this is what J.K. Rowling experienced, or I remember the eagle story, and they can make those connections to them in a really authentic way. So thank you so much, Dana, for sharing your skills and expertise. Do start popping your questions in the chat so that we can address those in a moment. I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you a little bit more about the Trainer Certification Institute, which is how Dana and I connected, and we've now connected many times since. I've presented with her now that she's done the trainer certification in Saudi Arabia, and she's also presented at conferences. So the Erickson and Lanning Trainer Certification Institute was something that was started by Dr. Lynn Erickson many years ago. I attended it myself, and it changed the trajectory of my career. I now work as a full-time educational consultant from having worked through that training. And now that Dr. Erickson and Dr. Lanning have retired, I have the opportunity to lead that trainer certification with a team of incredible educators from all over the world. We now offer that online as a year-long program where we meet with educators every weekend. We come together, we upskill people around the written curriculum in articulating conceptual understandings, in refining questions and generalizations, so that we have teams of educators each year that can go out and be supporting teachers around the world, either through workshops or many educators like Dana, who are based in a school in a curriculum leadership role or a school leadership role, or teachers in classrooms who are team leaders, and they want to be able to do both still, to be able to go out and lead workshops sometimes, but also to be there on the ground every day helping teams of teachers planning. So if you are in a leading role or leadership role in your school, or you are an aspiring school leader and want the opportunity to really drive change in curriculum and transform education, then do make sure you consider the Erickson and Lanning Trainer Certification Institute. In a moment, I'll pop the link in the chat so that you can find out more about that. Applications do close next month, so do make sure that you get your application in for that if it's something that you are considering. Many of people that I have seen in today's session have already done that trainer certification, so thank you for staying connected as a community and supporting each other. All right, we'll go now to questions. So let us know in the chat if you've got any questions that came up. I did see, Dana, one of them was, can you share the link to the Eagle video? A lot of interest in that, and I think Veronica did a quick Google search to see if she could find one and has linked one, but I'm not sure if it's the same one. So if you're able to share a link to the now legendary Eagle video, I think there's a lot of people who'd like to share that in their schools.
So Rachel, there is no particular one, just like you mentioned, you can just go to the YouTube and just write the lifespan of an eagle, and you can find many motivational 2-minute videos.
All right. The other thing while you're popping your questions in is while Dana was presenting, I actually took a photo of some of those World Health Organization milestones, and I sent it to two of my friends. I have a 8-year-old boy, and I sent it to two of his friends as well, mothers, and they were like, yes, this is my child. And then one of them went, it's so helpful to be reminded of this, to know that these are normal developmental milestones, and also to see the suggestions or tips for how to support that. So another tip that I would say is share some of those milestones with parents, because as parents, sometimes we can, get so caught up in our own child's behavior that actually to see that these are very normal things for children of this age to be struggling with can be a really helpful reminder. So if you're in a school leadership role who has the opportunity to be writing newsletters or putting out information to parents, or you're a classroom teacher and you think those milestones would be useful for your own children. All right, we've got some people who are heading off to bed. It's 1:30 a.m. in India. I know it's getting late in Europe as well. Fantastic. Any other questions that we've missed? Love the idea. Nope. I think you've covered it so well, Dana, that we don't have many questions coming through today, which is fantastic.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Rachel, always. It's wonderful.
Of course. Thank you so much for being able to join us today. As I mentioned, we will send out the replay as promised. Here is the link to the trainer certification information. Oops, hang on. I need to send it to everyone. There we go. If you're interested in the trainer certification, there is the link to that. Thank you to those of you who have turned up at very strange hours of the day or night to be able to join this session. Do join us next month. Next month, we have one that's specific to physical education. We have two amazing physical education leaders who will be sharing applying concept-based learning in that context. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.